I am your host Slim bin Mohammed Rafi, and this is my YouTube channel Zamir Universal. What is it you do when someone in your family does not cooperate, does not believe in the right of mother, father, government, or neighbor, or any other human being which looks like him, has equal rights to exist, and becomes a rogue or a vagabond, or as you say, a mafia, a killer, a baby killer, and calls himself a Jew, hides behind a religion which he absolutely is not, calls himself a Palestinian belonging to that thing, and if you test his DNA, has nothing to do with thousands of years of any Jew. He is not son or grandson of any Jewish person. And you have a bunch of rogues, bunch of vagabonds, bunch of criminals, land grabbers, who were left as leftover, as you are eating food and you keep your leftovers and put it to dogs. Instead of putting those leftover to dogs, they, from Poland, one of them, Chokiski, his name now Natenyahu, and you see what a havoc this single person is playing, and he is hiding behind the religion Judaism, which he has nothing to do with it. For matter of convenience, he puts a little black cap on his center of the head, and which is symbolic. He drinks, he is womanizer, he is criminal. There are many criminal cases against him, and he is one against the other. He is defying the courts of International Court of Justice for genocide which he is doing, and his recent which he bombed. And you see the tents, you see the camps, the art, last sort of shelter for them. With all these words, he said it is safe for you to move, and been throwing leaflets, and you could see the cunning and criminal nature of this person. And the whole, you see, most Jews from even Israel, many of which are not practicing Jews, but they are at least human. This man is a beast, he is not even a human. And so is his father. And I'm sorry to use this word, but he is his father. There's hardly one or two American presidents who I cannot say they are his father, and he is their illegitimate child. I give you just a little glimpse of Harry Truman, which was the actual father of Zionism, which found this land and stick and stabbed the back of the Palestinian, and see what he is saying, that gradually we will get it there, otherwise there will be a reaction. The Zionists want the whole of Palestine in a plate for them, and which can't be done. Now he is talking about this thing, remember, 75 years ago when he was the president. And so you can see, and you count dozens of presidents after that in the United States, with the exception of John F. Kennedy, and you see there's another one who in Iran's there, the one who gave, and Eisenhower. They gave a shut-up call to these Jews. One of them was assassinated. The other was only a president for single term. And this you can see for yourself. After Eisenhower and Kennedy, you can see that the present puppy dog, which is this, he says you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, which is your Sleepy Joe. You can have every strongest word for this man, so that it's time for this America and this to be thrown out of the international, all the bodies, and that can only be done if this pseudo empire now with no power, with the money owning in trillions with their government bonds held with China. So you can see him providing your tax money of the Americans. So you are helpless, you are herd of cattle. You live in a farm, so the America is a farm, and all that money you earn and your children and your father did it is going to go to their illegitimate child, which was, from Great Britain, and the Americans at that time, they carved that piece of Holy Land and gave it to the Zionists as prestige. See the contract. See what they've done in Rafah, and complete disregard for International Criminal Court for his arrest warrants, complete disregard for Intercourt of Justice, and you see the dare of the Speaker of the United States calling him to address. Damn you, that shows your filthy face. That shows how dirty, filthy, and how criminal you are. That you are asking a criminal, a war criminal, to come and address the joint session. What would you all look like? You will be sitting there like pygmies, small, tiny pygmies, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Put your faces behind in the color and see for yourself, and you will see how dirty, how filthy you are. You are not humans. So I am talking to the whole of Congress and the Senate, with the exception of those who have raised their voice and then they are labeled as anti-Semitism. Damn hell, there is no such thing as Semitism. Semites are Palestinian, mostly the Arabs. So it's nothing to do with this. These are liars, cheaters, and so just completely throw them out, and throw them out of all international bodies when they don't recognize, and arrest them. Arrest both Joe Biden, that bloody, or senators who wrote their right to that, and then all those people who are all the time, because they are the one who are paid. They are paid by epics, and all the expenses, even they are provided young boys and young girls for them to rape them. And you know that island, the guy who committed suicide. So it's all Mossad, Jews. So how come you are a Christian country? You're not. You are all a Zionist country, the whole of America. So those who do not want this label, it's better to get rid of these few who are there. Ban epic, ban all Jewish influence there, get them out of your country, bar them as you did to the Japanese after the Second World War, or put them out in the jungles. Don't care for their money. Have your honor and democracy if you want to save yourself. Or remember this, that the empires like you are already disintegrated, so has Israel. Look at your internationally where you stand today, and look how isolated both of you are. The United States, you are alone. And soon the blackened face will be thrown out of all the international bodies. And imagine how indignant, insulted all the Americans will feel who elected you. So it's about time that you get rid of this and vote for the new party, the Green Party, the party who has emerged from the young students demonstrating in the United States and now spread all over the world.
And many Israelis don't want to know what is going on inside Palestine. It's a terrible human rights persecution that far transcends what any outsider would imagine. And there are powerful political forces in America that prevents any objective analysis of the problem in the Holy Land. I think it's accurate to say that not a single member of Congress with whom I'm familiar would possibly speak out and call for Israel to withdraw to their legal boundaries or to publicize the plight of the Palestinians. And that is added on to by the very effective work of the American-Israeli group called AIPAC.
Hello, I'm Ted Pike, and this is my wife, Alin. Today, a foreign government, Israel, operates the most powerful lobby in Congress. This is AIPAC, the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee. Through control of Congress, Israel demands and gets nearly $5 billion annually. No elected official dares criticize Israel for fear the Jewish lobby will accuse him of anti-Semitism, the kiss of death for any politician. The president also knows what Israel wants, Israel gets. To act otherwise is political suicide. The mass media, founded and controlled primarily by Jews, manipulates the spigot of information out of which heartland America drinks. The message of this contaminated source is, if you criticize Israel, you are anti-Semitic. Be safe, keep your head down, or you are fair game for being knocked off by the Zionist shooting gallery.
As a result, our president and elected officials are slaves to political correctness when it comes to Jews and Israel. They cannot seriously criticize Israel, especially as the source of Mideast strife and terrorism. They cannot suggest an end of aid to Israel. They cannot even protest Zionist control of Congress.
Harris's annual report to the Security Council. It refers to the killing, maiming, denial of aid access and targeting of schools and hospitals. But as the report has not been made public, the exact accusations Israel faces are not clear. The list is known as the list of shame. ISIL, Boko Haram, Russia and Afghanistan have all been named, but this is the first time for Israel, although it was previously mentioned in the report for carrying out grave rights violations against children. The Security Council has responsibility for deciding what action to take once a country is included on the list. But Israel is already likely to face further reputational and diplomatic damage. In the International Court of Justice, it's already accused of genocide in Gaza and using starvation as a weapon of war. And prosecutors at the International Criminal Court are seeking warrants for the arrest of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defence Minister Yoav Gallant over alleged war crimes. The head of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, describes Israel's war on Gaza as a war on children, their childhood and their future. Yet, it continues in full force. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
There's no better example of that, is there, Gideon, than today when we've got the Israeli army rescuing 4 captives from inside Gaza, in the process killing more than 150 people. That number is rising rapidly. And yet in Israel, we're just seeing...
Israel will now addict itself to the release of the 4 hostages, which is by itself a great day and a very happy day for the families, for each Israeli. But still, there are some others, but Israel does not see the others.
Damien, Netanyahu said earlier...
delusional. And I think, going back to, as you've said in the footage before, this is not the first time there's been attempts to list Israel. In 2015, Israel was on the list, and then there was pressure put on the UN to remove it, and eventually didn't make the final cut of the report. So this has been a long time coming, and I think it's welcome. It is symbolic, but it will have additional pressure and put Israel increasingly isolated. So in that sense, I think it's extremely welcome.
You say there was
reasons Israel was put on the list, and at the last minute there was pressure that was put on by the US government and others to take off the list. I think this time around it would have been, extraordinary that anyone would, I think, would have the audacity to try and put pressure in this way. No doubt there probably was, but given that more children are being killed in Gaza since this latest round of conflict than all the other countries on that covered by this report, I think this speaks volumes to why there's such a compelling case for it to be listed this time around. So, no doubt there probably was pressure, but I think no one would think that it would be justified for them not being included. If they hadn't been included, it would have lost the whole credibility of the mechanism.
Children are swarming around begging for food, and that's not to mention those that you end up coming across in hospitals where it's bed after bed of children that have been amputated. And I was just in Cairo right now visiting some of the injured children that my charity Inara is working with. There was a boy whose leg had been amputated. There was another 7-year-old boy who was paralyzed from the waist down because shrapnel was lodged in his spine, and he quite simply didn't speak anymore. And his mother was saying that, he used to be very chatty. He loved running around. I met, another child also that spoke of this horrific story that had happened to him, talking about how, an explosion happened and the bottom part of the leg came off, and then just crawling, trying to find help. It's impossible to find a child right now that is not carrying some sort of extraordinarily deep trauma. And we also have to keep in mind that this isn't the sort of, war zone where something traumatic happens, a bomb goes off or a firefight erupts in your neighborhood, and then at some point in time it ends and there's an ability to flee to safe space. That doesn't exist. And children speak in rhetoric right now that no child should ever be using. And children are highly aware of the fact that their childhood has been taken from them, their safety has been taken.
It's the entire society of Israel, with some exceptions, obviously, but very few, who cannot see the people of Gaza as human beings and cannot even see the children of Gaza as human beings. It's part of their revenge, of the punishment of Gaza, of the revenge that Israel has to put on Gaza, and Gaza, not Hamas, because those children have nothing to do with what's going on. You mentioned now 150 people killed today. For Israel, any price is legitimate, any price. Gaza can pay any price, and the Israelis will not shock by anything and will not feel any empathy. And by the way, it's also almost forbidden by law to show any empathy. Israeli Palestinians, Israeli citizens who try to pay some
International Court of Justice. We've seen the process of the ICC. This is another accountability mechanism, and it does put pressure on the Israeli authorities. And I think, in time to come, it provides the kind of information that hopefully there will be justice. One thing I think important to, be mindful of this list is your name remains on the list until you take demonstrated action to address the concerns that are being raised. And there's probably no intention of the Israeli government engaging in dialogue with this mechanism to take the kind of measures to remove it, or at least the government of the day. But the name of the IDF will remain on the list until that happens. And so this will endure. It will come back as a news item in that sense. It will continue to put pressure
to them, or even to herself. I have met a number of children who quite literally lost their capacity to speak. We have to remember that, children don't have the sort of vocabulary to be able to articulate what they're going through. Although that being said, the vast majority of adults are highly incapable of articulating the depth and breadth and scope of, sort of the horror and the psychological obliteration that this has caused them individually as well. And when we're talking about interventions at this stage for children, because the trauma is still ongoing, because the triggers are daily, there really isn't a lot of work that have the spread of cholera, you have the spread of hepatitis A, you have the spread of communicable diseases. I mean, it is impossible for anyone inside Gaza or even in the West Bank to understand how it is that there can be, such a desire for this to end, and yet such an inability to actually not even end it.
President Biden, President Biden, President Biden, Mr. Blinken, can you hear me? Prime ministers and presidents of the European countries, can you hear me? Can you hear the screams from Shifa Hospital, from Al-Auda's Hospital? Can you hear the screams from innocent people, refugees sheltering, trying to find a safe place, being bombed by the Israeli attack forces this morning inside the hospital? Hospitals that are the temples of humanity and protection. When are you going to stop this? You're all complicit.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार जरूर.
Over 180 UNRWA buildings were hit and more than 450 displaced people were killed as a result.
Okay, so 180 times. They bombed United Nations facilities. And then they went and shredded the United Nations Charter at the UN, if you remember that scene. So they constantly spit in the face of the entire world and go, what are you gonna do about it? America's giving us all the money, we need to kill these people. We're above the law. And now the scum in our Congress are saying, oh, if the International Criminal Court is condemning you guys accurately, we would rather cut their funding and be despicable to the people trying to do a tiny bit of justice and be catered to the people who are doing the injustice. Guys, we've been over this, but if you watch mainstream media, you might not know this. AIPAC is spending $100 million in this election cycle. So they've scared the crap out of everyone. Pramila Jayapal's sister, Shushila Jayapal, ran in Oregon. They spent them and their allies spent $5.5 million against her. They spent $500,000 against Jamie McLeod Skinner. They spent $4 million in earlier cycles against Andy Levin and Nina Turner. And right now they're in the middle of spending $10 million against Jamal Bowman. And the idea here is no one better ever oppose Israel in America. And if you do, if you're a student, we'll have you arrested and make sure you don't get your diploma and rob you of the money that you spent on that diploma. If you're a politician, we will make sure to spend 4 million, 10 million against you, eliminate you from politics. So what message does that send to all of our other corrupt politicians? You better serve Israel first. If you don't, you're gonna be in a world of trouble. So now, I wanna go back to why it doesn't matter if there were Hamas militants, in my opinion. So that, again, in American media, that's an outrageous thing to say. Oh my God, if there was 2 militants, of course you could murder hundreds of citizens if you want. No, you can't. No, that's a despicable, immoral thing to do. So they say, well, Hamas hides behind human shields. We'll finish the sentence. So I murdered the human shields. I don't think that makes you a good person. I think that makes you a terrible person. If you said to me, hey, that's a bad guy and that harmed your family, that killed your family, and he's hiding behind 40 people, 14 kids, 9 women, I would never tell you to murder them. Never, never, never. And if you say, well, as long as they're Palestinians, who cares? Kill them all. You're a disgusting racist and deeply immoral. So
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार ज़रूर